a lot of what you're about to see is a reiteration of the discussion that just took place. We're going to start off with a look at the resolution and proposed preliminary budget and their language, and then we're going to talk about their implications, all of which has already been discussed tonight, so it'll be a good review. Following that, what you're going to see is essentially what's on the table. What don't we have to do that we already do? Okay? And I want to bring that up. And there are certain levels to that. There are things that have a dollar value to them for 15, 16 that we can put a dollar value to now. There are things that we do that have also obviously a dollar value to them that we can't put a dollar value to yet. But nonetheless, they're there for discussion. And I'm going to finish with talking about communication, how between now and when the board finally votes for a budget, how are we going to make this work? Being fiscally responsible and at the same time doing our very best to maintain the integrity of what is a phenomenal school system. It is excellent. And that's our job between now and budget time, May, June. Okay, so first thing we're going to start with is on the evening's agenda, you're going to see this, all right? I'm going to read it, just more for my own benefit. It's recommended that the Board of Education adopt the 15-16 fiscal year proposed preliminary budget, showing estimated available resources at $42,702,040, and estimated expenditures and ending fund balance in the amount of $42,702,040, establishing real estate tax millage at 16.6720, with a 2% discount if the whole amount of the tax is paid within 2 months after the date of the tax notice, payment at face if the tax is paid within 2 months following the end of the discount period, and a penalty of 10% on all taxes not paid within 4 months after the date of the notice. This represents a 5.45% tax increase. That is one option tonight. And like I said before, all 500 school districts in the Commonwealth have to pass either a proposed preliminary budget like this, or they have to pass this resolution. It's recommended that the Board of Education adopt the attached resolution regarding no increase in the rate of any tax for the support of its public schools for the 15-16 fiscal year by more than the index established by the Department of Education for the district. The index for the district is 1.9%. Okay, so those are the two options tonight. Now my next two pieces here, what are the implications? What does that mean? The first resolution, which isn't really a resolution, the first piece there that you saw, the proposed preliminary budget, allows the district to do three things. Number one, the board can seek to increase taxes to the index. That generates revenue. Number two, the board can seek an exception to go above the index and raise taxes above the index for costs associated with special education. Number three, they can seek an exception to go above the index for costs associated with the pension system. Okay? That's the three things that can happen with that. If passed, it requires a preliminary budget to be passed in February. There is no obligation to raise taxes at all with this proposed preliminary budget. It simply gives the board the ability to do so if it chooses. The implication, if the proposed preliminary budget at the end of it all is fully enacted, it represents a 5.45% tax increase. That means an approximate $86 increase per $100,000 of assessed value. That's one implication. Another implication, if fully enacted, there would likely be no change in the current programming offered by the district to its children, and it would leave the current fund balance relatively untouched. Those are just facts. That's what happens. Okay? The next piece. The second is a resolution allowing the district to raise taxes to a maximum of 1.9%. If the board passes the resolution and not the proposed preliminary budget, the option to take exceptions is off the table. Can't do it. Okay? Even if passed, there's still no obligation at this point in the year for the board to enact any tax increase, either now or in the future. That decision is made when the final budget's passed in May/June. The implications for this are a tax increase, which could be up to 1.9%, which translates to an approximate maximum of $30 per 100,000 assessed. It also leaves us with an approximate $800,000 deficit for 15-16, which will translate into programming cuts and/or negative impact to the current fund balance. You have a deficit, you gotta find the money one way or the other. You go into fund balance, which the board has done in the past, or you cut programming, which we've also been forced to do in the past. Those are the implications, some of the implications for each of those items. Kind of to summarize, the board's gotta pass one of these two items tonight, either the proposed preliminary budget or the resolution. Neither agenda item requires any tax increase, rather each provides the board a different level of flexibility to generate revenue if they so choose. If there is no tax increase in the 15-16 budget, that translates to an approximate deficit of $1.2 million. Major cuts to programming will be necessary along with potential negative impact on fund balance. So essentially, if you want to boil it down to its essence here, all right, there are three things that could happen in terms of taxes. No tax increase, a tax increase up to 1.9%, somewhere on that continuum from 0 to 1.9, or with the proposed preliminary budget, a tax increase that could include taking both exceptions and also going up to 1.9%. Those are the three things that could happen. All right? Now, the next piece of this, I lay out I lay out to our best estimates right now what we can look at to try to get a handle on or make up for those potential deficits. In my mind, looking at 1.2 million as the target for cuts. That's worst case scenario in my mind. So the budget analysis areas to consider. The first area is athletics. I'm going to take you right to the bottom of that slide. Our total athletics program, every penny of it. In 15-16, we're looking at $529,000 and change. You go back into the values that I have there for salaries and benefits, are the majority of it. Referees, officials, scorekeepers, repairs, maintenance, transportation, supplies, equipment, and fees. That's the athletics budget. Nowhere in the Pennsylvania School Code does it say that we have to have athletics. So that's on the table. The next one I have here are student activities, extracurricular activities, clubs, and the like. $188,711. Salaries and benefits are, again, the lion's share of it. We've got professional services, repairs and maintenance, transportation, supplies, and equipment, and event registration. Again, all open to discussion in terms of cuts. The next one with the dollar value that we can attach to now is intramurals. This budget has been slashed radically in the last 3 years. And we're down to $13,531 for intramurals. There are two programs primarily right now that benefit from that. That's after-school roller skating at Evergreen and Wilson, and it also funds most of our weight room. That's intramurals. Next is tutoring. We offer tutoring in the middle school and the high school after school several days a week for children who struggle academically. We staff tutoring with certified teachers. Right now, we're looking at $67,367 for that. That budget has also been cut in the past, but again, there's no obligation for us to do that.
You do it for free.
Outside counseling is another piece to this, but we don't necessarily have an obligation to do. This is Northeast Counseling, Victims Intervention, some Wayne County Drug and Alcohol. The total budget for that is $43,500. No obligation. Alt Ed, okay, placing children outside of the district who traditionally struggle. In the district, we have outside placements for these children. We don't have to offer Alt Ed, but oftentimes we have an environment just for any given day, for any given child. Over time, when you look at the history of a child who needs Alt Ed, it just doesn't work for them in the normal public school environment. We have other places for them to go, and many of them, when they go there, succeed. Again, no obligation. And I'm finished. Virtual learning. 3 years ago, we opened up the Virtual Learning Academy. here. The goal was to try to stem the tide of children leaving us going to cyber school. And we weren't completely successful. What we have done in doing this is stem the tide. Not as many kids leave us now. Oftentimes when a child wants to do cyber school, they go into ours. No obligation to do this whatsoever. My guess though is if you cut this, it would probably cost more money than not having it. I'm pretty confident of that. Our school police, last year, beginning, we transitioned from school resource officers with the Pennsylvania State Police. We saved quite a bit of money. Our school police budget for 15-16, we have is $67,432. There's no obligation for us to have a school police officer. Professional development and curriculum. We set aside about $40,500 to train teachers on an annual basis to try to keep up with the mandates that come at us on a daily basis from not only PDE but from the federal government. The big initiative right here now for us that's critical for our children in terms of their achievement is the PA core standards, and trying to have a handle, which we do, on all the changes that are related to those standards, because it is a radical shift from what we're used to seeing in terms of standards and assessment from the state. That's our budget to do training. We don't have any obligation to do it. All of that, we can put a hard dollar value to right now, gets us $1.1 million. 50% of that, more than 50% of it, has a direct impact on academics. So that's one thing to look at when you look at hard dollar values. Other things to look at that we can't really put a dollar value on right now, but we will as we move forward, are these. And this is not so much those things, but these are other things to consider in terms of how to save money. Also in this list, and I'll go through them one by one, are things that when you start to cut programs, there's going to be fallout in other ways that we've got to be aware of. So I'm trying to think of that as well. We talk about eliminating department chairs as a way to save some money. To go along with professional development, we do offer some clinic work for our coaches that's very beneficial to them. We don't have any obligation to do that. Uniforms, be it band or athletic uniforms, are there. Mowing and maintenance schedules. How often do we mow the grass? Why do we mow it that often? What kind of maintenance schedules do we have? How much money are we spending there? Can we do a better job? As a possible way to look at saving money. Any kind of travel for kids to district, regional, or state events, or for athletics or non-athletics, that's tied into a potential pay-to-play. In looking at this, one thing that came to mind is a fundraising policy. We have some policy now. We need to really revisit it very closely because I'm sure you've already seen it. And we have at school, the cuts we've already put in place, the fundraising efforts have gone way up. And we have a lot of stepping on toes. And that's become difficult. We have to address that formally with a fundraising policy. We have to look at attrition analysis. Last year, when we were able to say goodbye, I suppose, to roughly 17 staff members and only replace 3, that's saving by attrition, not paying that bill, right? That's a big dollar value. We've got to do the same thing this year, knowing that most likely fewer people are ready for retirement. Furlough and suspension is an option. When you cut programming, you don't need as many teachers. And looking at the steps to follow for furlough and suspension has to be on the table. Looking at athletics co-sponsorship, having teams sponsored by more than one district, and knowing that if we do go to a furlough or suspension, that there's going to be an effect on compensation premiums that's going to eat into that savings. So this is a list, and it's a short list. There's more to this list. It has to be. I just haven't gotten there yet. These are some of the things that we can also look at, and these are some of the implications that are going to follow. Programming not required by PA school code. These are things that we do, and we do them brilliantly here, but we don't have to. Pre-kindergarten. World languages are only required for 2 years in the high school. Business education isn't required, technology education isn't required, art education isn't required, nor is music education. None of it's required. Other areas to consider for cost reduction: school psychology, school social work, school counseling, and school nurses. All of them are critical, but we have levels of them here that may not be required. We need to look at that. Looking at secretarial staffing, administrative staffing, staffing in our information technology department, and looking at school restructuring. All of those things could be considered. Our next steps. We've got to do our best to recognize the unknown. It's difficult to determine without any state allocation information just what we would need to cut to reach that $1.2 million. It's really hard when we're required to put a budget together with no data. But we do it because the law requires us to do it, and we're not going to break the law. We also don't know at this point in the year what our staffing needs will be or what type of savings we may be able to realize from attrition. I addressed that in the last slide. We're going to develop scenarios based on the worst case, which reflects a $1.2 million deficit. In terms of communication, I believe it's important that between now and the time the budget is passed by the board, that we have an open forum, planned open forum to discuss potential budget scenarios and related implications, much like this type of conversation. But as the budget matures and as we get more information, I do believe we need to put it out there and talk about it. That's one piece. The other piece, faculty meetings and forum. This week, well maybe, most likely next week, meet with faculty as a whole to inform them of the current budget situation. And then I think it's important that there's a place online for community members to go, which should be hosted on our website, where community members can go and get the facts related to the entire process. This presentation, for example, probably should be part of that. So there's a communication piece that's going to be critical. And then the last question is, what do we value? And I'll say this with everything I believe about public schools, all right? All of the stuff I mentioned, okay, is combined to make what Western Wayne School District is, which is a phenomenal place for kids to learn and grow. I believe that very, very deeply, more deeply than I believe a lot of things. I've been honored to have been here for the past 8 years. I've seen the growth in student achievement go through the roof. It's been excellent. We are special, and it's a good place for kids. So the question I have in my mind is, what do we value? We value our schools, and we've got to do everything within our power to maintain their integrity. That's our job. Directly vested or not, I deeply believe that our collective future depends on it. We have got to look at every nook and cranny for savings. I understand that. But at the same time, we've got to work extra, extra hard to not undermine the integrity of what kids get when they walk in here, some of them when they're 3 years old, to when they leave, some of them when they're 21. So, right now, in saying, what's it going to look like in May? I can't answer that question. Nobody can. There's too many unknowns. But right now, what we've got to do is vote on a proposed preliminary budget or a resolution. That's one thing we've got to do. Knowing that, with either one, the scenario of no tax increase is still a possibility.
You're done?
I am.
When you said special needs of some of the children, what do you mean by special needs? Hearing impaired, eye impaired, or wheelchair?
When it comes to alternative ed,
No, what are the reasons you have to send them someplace special?
so
What are
it
the
could
reasons?
be behavior.
A what? Behavior?
Behavior,
Okay.
yep. It could be a learning need, okay?
That's what you're here to teach them.
Correct.
Okay.
But, and I hate to go back to the same old broken record, but IDEA, which is the Individual with Disabilities Education Act, requires us as a public school
That's another
system.
mandate.
It is, to do a whole lot of things for a whole lot of kids who have special needs.
But that means you have to teach them here.
We
If you can't
do-
pay, if you can't teach them here, you shouldn't pay to send them somewhere else.
Well, sometimes we don't have a choice. We have a consortium among the 3 public school districts in Wayne County that does a darn good job, in my estimation, of keeping kids in public schools with special needs. And we teach the vast majority of them here. But sometimes they require special attention that we can't provide them.
All right, I know how you can solve all these problems once. Put it on a referendum, a 1.9% increase or 5.45%. And put it on a referendum and get the vote. And if it's voted in, you got it. If it's not, you're out. Then you gotta start cutting those programs with this school. It's that simple. You might get very difficult for us to even comprehend what you just said there. For me, it was. You said a whole lot of gobbledygook to me.
I disagree.
I don't think any of us know.
You can disagree all you want.
I will.
That's our life,
Me too.
and it's children's lives. And we need to fight for it hard.
Put it on a referendum then.
If we were to try and go above the 5.45%, it would go to referendum. And again.
No, you shouldn't even be going to 5, you should go, even with the 1.9%, you just got 6% last year.
I understand, Joe, but what I'm telling you is what's the law. If we were to go above the 5.45, then it goes
Go
to
to a
referendum.
referendum regardless of what you're looking for. And you know it'll get voted down, and then you have to start cutting. And you're asking the people, we elected you guys to represent us. Now you've got to start doing your job. I'm not saying you're not, but you got to start really buckling down and doing the job the best way
You
you
just said
can.
we've got to start doing it, and then you said you're not saying we're not.
You are, you're doing a good job fighting us.
Joe, I think you have to admit, we've been pretty good custodians of the public
You have
to this point.
But now
And
it's
again-
time to bite the bullet. We gotta start fighting back. We gotta start making decisions that are gonna hurt some and help us.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, I agree, Joe. I mean, we're all in the same boat. And again, as I mentioned earlier, when the state puts the taxing burden on the local authority because they don't want to take the heat for it, that's exactly what they're doing. And they can say they're going to give you all the state money they want, but you and I pay the state taxes just as well as we pay the local taxes. And so until they adopt a system, that works on the general public rather than on the local real estate base, you're not going to see any change. And that's where Pennsylvania has failed us. So, again, we've been very good custodians of the public money. We're paying 8-point-some% of our budget is for interest needs. Most districts are in double digits. We've been very good with what we've borrowed and what we've done on capital projects. Mr. McDonough mentioned, our buildings are in very good condition. We do things that, we make sure that we're on a 10-year plan, basically. So the high school, middle school was remodeled at one point. The R.D. Wilson School was remodeled. We put the new school on the south end. But it's all on a cycle. We're not doing everything at once and coming back and saying, give us, $24 million for a capital project. So that takes a lot of planning. What Mr. Gadenzi had mentioned about borrowing, Mr. McDonough had mentioned about borrowing. We can do certain things. There are laws that we, of course, have to adhere to. We can do tax anticipation borrowing based on when our tax money will be coming in, but we can't borrow money just for operating expenses. So we've got to be good custodians and adhere to the law on our end. That doesn't mean the state's going to comply with the law on their end. Again, we're at the wrong end of the food chain. I appreciate what you're saying, and again, going to resolution on a ballot, that would answer all the questions.
Yeah, it would.
And again, New York operates that way. I think New York and New Jersey, maybe. You vote on the local budget. You vote on your borough budget, your school district budget. I mean, you've got 100% input. So, maybe there's some validity to that. When we do things, we don't have to provide transportation. We could eliminate every bus and every van in this district, and we're not required to bus anyone, But do we do it? Yeah, we do it. At a cost to us, I mean, we get reimbursed for a portion of it, But our annual cost just on busing is probably approaching 1.4 million maybe. So, you know, those are things that can be cut, but are they good for the good of the community? You know, if we say we're gonna cut busing out, we just put 80 bus drivers out of work, we put 30 contractors out of work who own the buses, did we help the community or did we hurt it?
Excuse
Do
me,
we have
I don't,
absentee?
but more
that's gonna
importantly,
drive up?
on that point, how are the children gonna get to school in
Exactly.
Western Wayne School District without busing?
So now our
That's-
absentee goes up, do the kids really gain from it? We've shot ourselves in the foot again. So those are all things, and we go through this every year, and we look at every item, you know, these board members bring things to the table, you know, they bring in the ideas, we try to work around it, but I think personally that we've been pretty good custodians of the money that's come into this district. Our debt service is minimal compared to most, we've got a short-term debt comparative. You know, 6 years to be debt-free in that regard is tremendous for a district this size. Find another municipality in this area that can say that, I'd be very surprised. And again, you know, we do our best with what we have. But again, the mandates that come in, just as you're saying, any alternative education, whether it's a judicial placement or individual need, I mean, those are all things that we can't control, but we do adhere to the law. So, yes, Roger, another question?
I reluctantly admit that you guys are good custodians.
You are. Thank you.
But a year from now, we're gonna be in the same situation again, and I hope we have another full room like we did tonight. But we're gonna be talking about the same problems.
Yeah.
When are you gonna decide to finally just pull the Band-Aid off and let this bleed a little bit?
That may happen this year. I don't know until we see final numbers.
The problem is, like Dr. LeCoe and Al said, and everybody on this board, we've come so far academically, we've come so far in our athletic programs, we've come so far with our band. I remember in 1997, when I first came on, Mr. Waters, the late George Waters, said to me when I was running, we need to fix the band. Frank Ward was on the board then, we got together and we worked on getting the band better. We have a lot of great things going on. It's hard just to throw the towel in because the people down in Harrisburg don't do their job. Act One was to reduce, it came about with the gambling. We had meetings here, every district. They were supposed to reduce our property taxes each year and continue to bring it down. They lied to us, and they continue to lie, so we bank on them supporting public education, and they don't. Roger Cole.
So you keep talking about Act One. Okay, so we got dealt a bad set of cards. We gotta play the hand that we're
But it's
dealt.
constantly, it's just making a point in Act One.
But, and you keep talking about how important this is for the community, all these programs.
Yeah.
What good is it if I can't come see it, or Brenda can't come see it, or the Januszewski can't see it? It's not helping the community if we're taxed to the point where we've got to work to pay for it.
I understand
It's
your
not-
point. I do understand, but there's a lot of people that do come to the plays.
Sure, because
There's a
they
lot of
afford
kids
it.
getting scholarships now academically to go to college. There's kids getting scholarships now that are in sports, athletic programs, to go to college. There's a lot of good things from what you people invest in happening. I understand it doesn't benefit
Let it go back to the
everybody.
parents then,
Huh?
and let them decide.
I
whether
know it
it's
doesn't benefit everybody, but that's,
We're gonna take a couple more questions, then we're gonna move back to the board if we need to get a motion on the table, yes.
My name is Rick Hope. We've got three children in the district right now, from elementary school, middle school, and in the high school. Most of the programs that Dr. LeCoe spoke of, our children have been involved in at some point, from sports to band to music to arts, all of it. So I would ask that the board do their best to try to keep all those programs in place, because I know my children benefit from that.
Thank you. Did I see one over here? We're good? One more.
Mr. Putnam made a comment about the benefits and salaries that probably would not affect this budget in negotiations at this point.
It's under negotiation now, Rick.
Yeah, whether or not it would affect this year's, we don't know. No new
That would have
contract
to
is
come
in
to
place.
some resolve pretty quick.
And also, Dr. LeCoe had mentioned, as far as furlough and review, this board did approve last month a motion, I think it was last month, yes, a motion to, this past month, yeah. Earlier this month, a motion to have the superintendent and his staff review our current needs. Again, you know, with some declining enrollment and, you know, we'll see what the nutrition's gonna be through retirement. But we have to look at, you know, we've always tried to keep optimal class sizes You know, and maybe it's a case where, you know, that's gonna change and we have to move staffing around based on retirements. But the superintendent will be looking into that over the next few months and then coming back with recommendations also. And again, that goes along with the staffing requirement.
Now, just to follow up on attrition, we've been doing that for the last, 7, 8 years now. And when our elementary enrollment has been declining, and we've had retirees, we haven't replaced them. It's been going on for 7, 8 years now. We've been changing things up, making the class sizes to benefit everybody, but now it's coming a time maybe we have to look at enlarging our elementary class sizes as a possibility. But we have done the attrition thing for several years now to benefit both the taxpayer and ourselves. There's no reason to hire somebody when your enrollment is dropping and you don't need to. And that's what we've been doing, so.
All right, I'm going to pull this back to the board now. We've